I direct this research group, the Urban Atmospheres research group at Intel Research, where we're sort of looking at trying to deconstruct urban spaces and the technologies there and look for opportunities for the new kinds of sort of urban lifestyles that we are going to, we know that we're going to basically integrate them into our lives, but we want to look at a wider scope of what's possible beyond just always focusing on these kind of low-hanging fruit of location services, or we'll be able to find a good restaurant. A lot of the work, actually, I just wanted to I'm in New York, so I felt I'm obviously very inspired, and also sort of mark the passing of a great spokesperson in this area. Jane Jacobs sort of put this very succinctly, I thought, in what we're trying to look at, this idea that lowly, unpurposeful, and random as they appear, sidewalk contacts are the small change from which a city's wealth of public life may grow. And the interesting thing is, I think that's, at least with the Urban Atmospheres group and the projects that I'm interested in, it's not always looking at the sort of huge mega projects. It's often looking for these kind of in between the cracks and the smaller things that really give us life. On a side note, I just learned that Jane Jacobs lived in the same building as Serpico, so I can only imagine what happened in the hallway. So, anyway. To put it another way, I think there's a lot of discussion about technology, and I'm really worried. Let's not confuse frenzy with efficiency. And I think the people in this room pretty much probably agree with that, but just sort of reiterating that having more technology often and creates this really frenetic lifestyle, and we're more interested in kind of not confusing that with being efficient. And actually, the title of the talk is sort of designing for wonderment, and I don't really have an answer for that, but I'm very interested in this idea of wonderment and this idea that, let's step back and realize that we're more than just problem solvers. We're actually creatures of sort of boundless curiosity. And mixed within our moments of productivity are these sort of brief instances of daydreaming and wonderment. We find ourselves astonished and in awe. Of course, not just at the extraordinary. This is the Cloud Gate at Millennium Park. But even just the ordinary. We marvel at the mundane everyday experiences and sort of objects that evoke mystery and doubt and uncertainty. And these are things we wonder about, sort of, how many newspapers has that person sold today? When was that bus last repaired? How far have I walked today? How many people have ever sat on that bench? Does that woman own a cat? Did a child or an adult spit gum on that sidewalk? What is the secret lives of taxi cabs in our city? A lot of you are familiar with this project, Cab Spotting, largely directed by Scott Snibbe and Stamen Design. Where are all the mobile phone usages in our city? It's a duplicate slide from last night. It's always these overlap slides. This is sort of real-time Rome. And that's obviously, you guys heard last night from the Madonna concert. You can see a lot of activity there. But sort of uncovering this Hertzian space again. And the reason why I'm interested in this is it's these feelings of wonderment that kind of color and enrich our lives. And the claim that I'm making is that our future sort of technological tools that we're going to want to co-inhabit our urban spaces with are going to be those that incorporate the full range of real human experiences. And that's, of course, we're going to want things to help us be efficient. I want to make it to the subway on time. I want to find a good restaurant in this neighborhood I'm not familiar with. I want to meet one of my friends someplace. But let's not be so focused on this. Let's realize that we're also going to want to promote daydreaming and wonderment. And the idea is that in the bigger picture, how can we sort of design technologies, or changing our nomenclature from this morning, instruments to support this wonderment? And again, I don't promote answers, but I'm just going to tell you a couple projects that we did that I think sort of touch on this idea of wonderment. They don't really set out to solve problems. One of them, some of you are probably familiar, we looked at this idea of the familiar stranger, people that I think everyone's aware of, that you see regularly, they're familiar to you, but they're strangers. You don't actually interact with them. It is a real relationship. It's one in which you mutually agree to ignore each other without any implications of hostility, right? So if you ignore your friend, you're telling them something. You ignore your familiar stranger, that's just the definition. Also, on a really interesting sort of side note, of course, we were inspired by technology and Stanley Milgram and a number of other people working the space, but largely, we often find when I'm looking at these projects, the first people there are really artists. I mean, I think a lot of people are also familiar with Vito Conci, who did this project called Following Peace, that I'm happy to say may not have happened if this very institution, the Architectural League of New York, didn't fund this work back 37 years ago this week exactly, where he did this. So I want to applaud that. That was great. And I'll cut to the chase on this project. We actually designed sort of a mobile phone tool that used Bluetooth as a way of beaconing the people around you, and several different iterations on visualizations based on color scheme, icons, so people at a cafe would appear a certain way. Basically, a new map or a new way of visualizing the people around you, the kind of place that you inhabited. And I'll leave that open because I don't want to go on just one project. We also looked at a very ubiquitous object on the urban landscape, and that is the public urban trash can. And this project, Jetsam, was largely looking at the same way archaeologists look through layers of a civilization to uncover sort of the story of the culture and how did the people live. Could we actually look at just a public trash can and the interactions with it throughout the course of a day or a week and kind of uncover a pattern and say some commentary about the kinds of people that inhabited it? We all are sort of fascinated with the traces of objects that people leave behind, and so this was kind of picking up on that. I'll cut to the chase on this project as well. We basically designed probably the world's most expensive trash can. It's got some video equipment in it. It's also got a sensor for a scale. It measures basically the weight and all the objects thrown into it, takes pictures, records them, and then it sort of puts out this visual display based on how the objects that are thrown in basically rotate based on how heavy they are, and they sort of move away from the trash can. Now, I won't go into some big critique about this, but I will say that it sort of changes the notion of trash can as a place to hide trash to a place to expose kind of the objects people care about and the activities they're performing. Another project was this one called Sachet, which was looking at, well, people often talk about using wireless signals to sort of triangulate your position, give you a longitude and latitude, and start to deduce some kind of mapping exercise. But what if we sort of invert that and say, well, how do we move around the infrastructure of just cell phone towers? Like, here, this could be how you move around. Maybe they're colored by the time of day. There's sort of places you go during the day. There's your kind of neighborhood. But you start to have this really inverted geography because suddenly you can move between places by going through maybe a bunch of cells if, say, you take a cab downtown, or you jump between cells if you just jump, the A train or something. So you get different, for me, for example, San Francisco International Airport is directly connected to JFK because I pass seamlessly between them. A cut to the chase again, we did a mobile phone application that lets you sort of visualize these patterns. We don't get into labeling, here's a park, here's this, here's that. It's just, I'm that kind of person. So you start to reflect on, what's a sort of road trip to Vegas look like? What does it look like on the weekend? Am I the kind of person that hangs around one little neighborhood, or am I kind of really stringy? And what it's doing is the center is just showing you the cell you're in, and the size is basically how often you're in that cell, so you quickly pass through certain cells. And the color is based on the sort of time of day you go there. Above the sort of circled dot in the middle, it's projecting the most common routes that you've taken. So literally, if you take the road less traveled, you sort of go off to the side. But I really want to hit on this idea of wonderment, and I just want to sort of draw that to the focus. And I'm really interested in this idea of kind of what are these new objects, new sort of public urban objects. In some sense, they're sort of superpowers and super senses designed by you and delivered by your mobile phone. The idea is to take sort of a very modular design and see what would happen. Now here, we're all familiar with this. This is like, for sure, the most depressing picture I could possibly imagine. I get these all the time. This is the vision of our future mobile world. Yes, we can run desktop applications as mobile phones. I cannot imagine being in the brainstorm sessions that came up with this. This is just so pathetic. When I see this, it's just, I just go, okay, we got to do something. This is just too depressing. So I kind of want to come back to this notion that this has been a debate where it came up in some of the discussions, which were, how are we going to measure success? How are we going to basically evaluate what we're doing? I would claim we're at sort of an early crossroads where our sort of mission is more just to generate more vocabulary for everyone to talk about. Not so much we got to get the killer applications, but let's just generate more vocabulary so that we have, this is not the single choice 5 years from now when people say, what do you want? Well, I'd kind of like some icons down the side. Okay. In fact, I think the whole mobile phone, you start to think of it as not simply an interface from person to person, but really I kind of want to redefine it as sort of really supercomputer radio station with sensors, okay? So now your phone is connected to all kinds of sensors and actuators, and it is very much, I think this notion's come up earlier in the day, the idea of a measuring instrument. It's really in the environment measuring things. And of course you can carry this around, but it could also belong to a place. It could be, on a bridge or a building. I mean, they almost act like sensor networks in some sense. So they're kind of measuring things. And we start to think about the way people do toolkits. I know everyone's pretty much familiar with Lego Mindstorms, but the idea that they created this toy that, in fact, something like 70% of their users are adults, basically. They're hacking this and adding new sensors and things like that. And I think this hacker, builder, do-it-yourself aesthetic is a really powerful one. I mean, this is probably an overstatement, but I'll just throw it out there because it's somewhat, it's really over the top. But, I mean, you get people that sort of can maybe hack bicycles, kind of know physically how they work, and someone that's kind of got some sense of how to deal with materials and sewing and kind of cloth, and then boom, you get stuff like this. Now, I admit this is over the top, but I want to just draw your attention to the fact that this is the only way you get really big shifts. You don't get it from this kind of really iterated design. You basically have to have people enabled to really build and sort of dream very large visions. And, here are the sort of small versions of that today, right? People are kind of hacking their iPod, and they're having Roomba cockfighting action with their, vacuum cleaners. And of course, your car, that's prone to hacking. You got who wants a hybrid? You got to have like the fully tricked out electrical version. But I want to come back to how this can sort of the idea is to sort of empower everyday people to become their own authors and their own builders and creators in their city, and to put the mobile phone at the center of that. So why put the mobile phone at the center? I mean, it's sort of a familiar urban object. We're all used to it. It's not sort of some microcontroller. It basically has it's very understandable. It's a commodity consumer item. It's already just automatically globally networked. You're just online. It speaks the lingua franca of the street, right? It's got SMS and Bluetooth, things like that. It's sort of becoming the dominant urban processor, and it's got this little screen so you can already see things happen and debug it and stuff. So we've basically been putting this at the center of a toolkit that we've been designing, so you can sense, microphones and cameras and all kinds of different input and analog sensors and buttons and stuff like that. You can drive motors and basically send SMSs and things like that. And the idea is that basically allow people to sort of visually program it. There's sort of a picture there. The sort of visual tool just basically exports some XML that gets read into a little sort of kernel that runs on your phone. And the idea is we really like to have this be on open source phones, but for now, that's a separate discussion. I won't get into it now. But you can start to empower people to say, hey, this is actually a little program that says, okay, if there's a certain level on the microphone, then send an SMS to someone, or it could be to call someone. So it could be when there's noise pollution in my neighborhood, call the authorities and tell them it's loud here. That plane just went over. So it's about empowering people to have more of a voice rather than these sort of large civic engagements. It also means that when you're sitting someplace, SMSing or something like that, you could actually be there, hacking and coding and creating sort of new experiences. And again, just this idea of empowering others to kind of create, report, and compare measurements that have some personal meaning to people rather than the sort of generic, sort of filtered civic government solution. So rather than, here is your air quality, it's like, no, I want to say what my air quality is for me, and I want to develop my own sort of way of doing that. A lot of the urban technologies, and for good reason, I'm not saying there's something wrong with this, but a lot of them are designed as one system designed for thousands. And you kind of need that, right? A location system kind of has to have an established protocol and things like that. But what about thousands of systems designed for few? So, something that just I care about, or my 4 friends, or, just the bike messengers, or just the urban gardeners. So kind of getting them to sort of have a voice is a big deal, because I think that's where all the interesting projects are going to come from. I mean, these are just random. I mean, you could sort of say, I'm curious what kind of nightlife goes on in my city. You could have a little threshold for motion detection and capture images and upload them to servers. There's a group that actually, in the Baylands, this is in the Bay Area, but they basically want to they're going to develop this, and they want them to put in wind power so that they can generate the substation nearby And there's all this debate about it. Well, they could just go out and basically take their own measurements and just avoid the whole sort of big civic debate about it and say, we actually made measurements ourselves and this is what we did. People could vote basically by sort of just subtle street nuances. So, the same way you go through a toll booth, maybe there's ways to do that. And I'll just leave you with this one. This is this project we did right at the very end, which was just, it was basically influential in us designing some of the ideas, but we looked at just urban sounds and we basically said, let's try to do some experiments at a farmer's market and how people felt about their feelings, and they listened to sounds and placed them on maps, and how could people mix their own sounds. This is like a mix station where people can mix urban sounds. And then we basically looked at using sort of the Bluetooth idea of people moving by as a way to modulate sounds and output them through a public system. And again, keeping with this kind of objects of wonderment theme, we want to put the mobile phone at the very center of this. So this is actually a mobile phone, and that's a speaker. And we set this out in public, and the idea is that kind of everyone here contributes some different sound. Maybe I'm a dog barking, maybe someone's like a parakeet, maybe someone's just a sound of traffic if they're from Los Angeles, right? And so there's this kind of place-based ringtone that just gets generated. Not solving any problem, but it's sort of saying, hey, here's basically some new way to reflect or to kind of create a wonderment about who are the people that come here and what's happening. So a lot of stuff to sink in. I just skimmed over it, but I want to thank you. There's these sort of free PR things that I brought if you want to find out more information. So thank you.